Good evening, everyone. It is your girl, Marcy Thomas, and I am excited to be back with you for another episode of Live Well Sister. So please come on in the room, and I'm going to just tell you off the top, go ahead and invite your friends, your family, your loved one, especially the other women in your life, but the men as well, because this is a conversation that really will apply to everyone who's interested in things that we can do to begin to make lives better for ourselves and just get some really good information. So I'm just telling y'all that at the top. So I'm coming to you from the outskirts of Atlanta, originally from Cleveland, Ohio, and a whole bunch of other places in between. So I am happy to be with you on a Tuesday, which isn't my normal night, but this conversation was so important that I felt like we needed to get it in where we could fit it in. So tonight we are going to be talking about the double tax, how women of color are overcharged and underpaid, which is, we know that this is so true, with our special guest, Anna Gifty Opoku-Agyeman. Now, she is an award-winning Ghanaian American researcher and writer and a current postgraduate student at Harvard Kennedy School studying public policy and economics. She is the youngest recipient of a CEDAW Women's Rights Award by the United Nations Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, and the editor of The Black Agenda, which received widespread praise from outlets such as NPR, Essence, Telemundo, Foxo, and the New York Times. And so we've got such powerful things to talk about, so I'm not going to delay any further and go ahead and bring Anna into the room and welcome her to the stage. Welcome, Anna.
Hello, everyone. Hi, Ms. Marcy. How are you?
I am doing good. So good to see you on the screen. Saw you in person a couple weeks ago, and yes, I'm so excited to see you here and have people have a chance to be a part of this great conversation. So thank you for making time to be here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
Yes. So this book is really powerful. And at any time you would have written it, it would have been a big deal. But right now, even more so, it feels like, because of the times that we're in and the things that we're seeing happen in real time. So, well, first of all, before we get into the double tax, I just want to know a little bit about you, because introduction or bio doesn't necessarily really tell it. But I want to know some things about you. So first, what is it that inspired you to even want to pursue this path of being an economist and all the other things that you're doing?
Yes. So again, hi, everybody. So grateful to be here. Brown Girl Collective is so important to our literary community. And thank you so much, Miss Marcy, for allowing me to share the stage with you. So what inspired the double tax? Or is it the double tax or inspired me to become an economist? Is what you asked. Sorry.
First part, the economist. Yes.
So, I feel like there's a lot of people in power that listen to certain types of people. And one thing I observed as I was growing up is that people pay attention to folks who understand the numbers. At the time, I didn't know that these are the types of people we call economists, but I was the kind of kid who watched TED Talks growing up. So I would be binging TED Talks. I know, such a nerd, sorry, but binging TED Talks and not realizing that folks that I was listening to were economists. So I remember listening to TED Talks from Dambisa Moyo or Okojo Iweala. These are sort of African women who also have economics backgrounds. And I didn't realize that that's what they were trained in until I got to college and I learned a little bit more about what econ was all about, namely through a friend who said, hey, I'm using math to study community colleges. And I said, how are you doing that? And he was like, I'm analyzing data. I'm asking questions about the data that I'm analyzing and I'm seeking out answers. And I said, whoa, didn't know that that was something you could do. And at the time I was very lost to kind of give you a sense. I had changed my major like 5 times in 1 week. I had no idea what I wanted to do. But ultimately what I learned was that economics is the language of power. So when you think about who the powerful are listening to, they're listening to people who understand the data, even if the data itself isn't necessarily what they like to see, right? So the current administration, and I would argue administrations that have very similar views, may not like the data around, you know, understanding inequality as it pertains to Black women, but they sure as heck, sure as heck like the data.
Be yourself, girl. Be yourself.
We sure as heck like the data that white men doing well or white communities doing well. So on either side of the aisle, in the middle of the aisle, above the aisle, below the aisle, people care about the numbers. So I think that if you're really trying to make a case for a certain outcome, policy, even just a certain experience in our world, numbers are a very powerful way to make that case. And so that's sort of what I have landed on. And that's why that is my toolkit for understanding the world around us.
And I think that's so important, you know, because the numbers don't lie.
The numbers don't lie.
I mean, they can lie about the numbers, but the numbers don't lie.
Correct. Especially, right? Because I think also when it comes to numbers, it's also about narrative. Depending on the questions you ask, the numbers will reveal themselves. So if I say I'm more interested in asking questions about white women, those are the numbers that I'm going to focus on. Those are the numbers I'm going to collect. Versus if I say I'm actually interested at the intersection of race and gender, well, I now have to think not only about women in general, but also how race intersects with that. And that also will shape the numbers that emerge.
So I enjoyed knowing a little bit about you and how you landed here. I have read the book, and as I always tell people, the point is to read the book. So it's not a quote unquote spoiler type of book, but there is a lot of information, and we're not going to give it all to you because we want you to actually pick up a copy of the book and read it because it really is that important. And I've already said to Anna, I know some other people that I'm going to share it with because we may be having some of these similar conversations, but having it here in this concise way to really be able to work through it and think about it and you know, plan and plot. I think it's
heavy on the plot. Heavy on the plot.
Heavy on the plot.
Yeah.
To figure out how we can overcome some of these things. So we know about you, but the double tax specifically, what was it that led you to want to write this particular book?
So I've been telling this story all over the country, but I would love to maybe add some more color here. So I was giving a speech a couple of years ago at the edge of 2020, maybe beginning of 2021, you know, when corporations cared about Black people for like 2 seconds.
Right.
So that little period is when I was booked for this conference. This conference, I believe, was for accountants. It was just like a crowd that I had never like spoken to before. And long story short, I was making a case for the Black Women Best framework, which I opened the book up with. This is Janelle Jones's work where she basically says the best outcome for us, Black women, it's a better outcome for everyone else. Or if the economy is working for Black women, it's probably working for everyone else because we are oftentimes among the worst off in society. And so made this case. I thought I did a pretty good job. Okay. You know, I was bubbly or whatever, and I had my numbers to back it up, the data to back it up. I get off stage and a white old man kind of walks up to me and he's like, oh, hello. And I'm thinking, okay, you know, we're going to have a nice little conversation. But I can tell by his demeanor, he's about to give me some unsolicited feedback. You know what I'm saying? So I didn't ask for the feedback. He's still going to give it to me anyway. So, you know, I say hello, I greet him. And then he says, you know, I wanted to ask you about your speech. And I said, sure, like, great. And so he goes ahead and says, you know, first of all, good speech, you know, it was really interesting. But I really wanted to ask, like, do you actually think that making things better off for Black women would actually improve things for everybody else? And I was like, were you at the speech or
right.
did you get up? I don't know. I was much kinder than that. I was like, yeah, that's kind of what I was talking about in my speech. And then he said, prove it. And I said, hold my water. Hold my wine, rather, right? I was like, hold on, give me some time. But I told him at the time, like, here are a couple of things that I cited in the speech. And he's like, yeah, but like, how do we know that that's actually going to benefit everybody else? And so it kind of set me on this path of wanting to prove him wrong, that like, like we know this, but I'm realizing that the facts that he has access to aren't the same facts that I have access to.
Right.
And so I need to do my due diligence as a scholar in training, or maybe a scholar already. I've maybe already arrived. Yes. That like I need to make these facts that I know from the data, from the articles, from the op-eds, from the ways in which we've done research available to the public so that we all have the same set of facts, where at minimum you can get access to these facts right away, right? Either you buy your book, you listen to it on Audible, or you go to your local library and you check out a copy for yourself. But that was really, in my opinion, kind of like the impetus of why this book exists. And I think what has sustained sort of my overall interest in keeping this book alive, because writing a book is really hard, y'all. It's really, really hard, right? Is the fact that throughout this entire process, many different things have happened to Black women in the public eye. And it just became more and more and more apparent to me, this book is actually falling in the lap of a very important moment in our country, in our global history, where we're really going to be documenting the ways in which Black women are treated unequally. And we're going to say this is actually costly for everyone to hopefully help us scale back the harm that's already been done.
Yes. Thank you for that, because sometimes it's like, okay, I'm gonna prove that I'm right. Like test me if you will.
That's right.
Yeah, I shall pass the test.
That's right.
I just think that is, powerful that you didn't take that as, oh, well, maybe you took it as like, okay, bet, challenge. That's right. I'm going to go ahead and do this because, as I'm reading through the book and even in conversations that I just have with people, other Black women from day to day, because the world that I exist in is heavily populated by Black women.
I love that.
Stuff that you're talking about, it's true. We talk about it in our conversations. So, of course, in the book, there's the research and there's the data and, there's surveys and all those types of things. But then you also do actually have conversations with people. So just tell us a little bit about what that process was, and then we can get into some of the things that the book dives into.
Yes. So, one thing you'll hear me saying as I'm, having great conversations like this one is that it's really we, right? So there was a huge team behind this. I got to give a shout out to my girls, Kaylee and Alexa, who really helped sort of really get those thoughts out of our wonderful interviewees that we spoke to. We spoke to around 100 women across the country. And what people don't know is that to get to that 100 women, we actually started out with about 4,000, right? Wow. Really crazy. So I put out a call out and I said, hey, anybody want to talk about the cost that they deal with as women and non-binary folks? And the call was received. It said ring, ring, ring. Everybody said hello. And so we had 4,000 individuals essentially submit the form. We could only pick 100 out of them. So we ended up screening some of those folks. We went through the whole research process just to make sure everything was ethical, make sure folks were safe. And then we actually used pseudonyms. So the names that are mentioned in the book are actually not their real names because we wanted to protect them. But ultimately, the process was really incredible. And I think that one thing that we realized was these women have not had any space to publicly reflect about these costs. And I want to maybe reemphasize what I'm saying here. We have not had a conversation as a society about how expensive it is to be a woman. We had a lot of conversations about how we optimize being a woman. Like, oh, maybe we cut costs here, maybe we cut costs there. But no one has actually pulled out the receipts. Like, actually, this is how much we're spending in time, in money, in effort. And I think that this is what this book ultimately unearths. I think there's a lot of people who want to pigeonhole and say it's only about Black women. But I think what the book does is says, look, all women are spending a lot of time, money,
Right.
and effort.
Right.
But the bill is really, really high for
Mm,
Black women. And
mm,
so that is why, if we're talking about, addressing inequality in full, you want to start with the person with the highest bill, the person
mm,
with the longest receipt. And in
mm.
the conversations that we had with Black and white women across
Yes.
the nation, it became really apparent how these sort of costs manifest in everyday life, right? So one thing
Mhm.
I'll mention here, and we'll get into some more details later, is that when we were talking to, high school and college girls about beauty,
Mhm.
it was really interesting to hear them say, we're all dealing with the beauty standard. And these are the celebrities that we think are beautiful because they
Right.
fulfill our beauty standard, right? So white women are saying Taylor Swift, Black women are saying Gabrielle Union. So we have some sort of picture of what that is. But the
Mhm.
amount of effort to reach that beauty standard is
Right.
very different across racial lines. And
Absolutely.
really, the cost is showing up in our hair. So, for
Mhm.
example, I'll be very honest because I'm talking to Black women right now.
Right.
I got my braids in. They looking a little crusty crust. I had an interview before this one, and I had debated on the plane, do I take my hair out and try to rock a natural style, or do I just try to freshen up these braids and just like go all the way through? Thankfully, when I went on camera, this lady was like, "Oh, it was a Black woman. Your hair don't look bad." And that's when I was like, "Okay,
You're good.
I'm good." But
Right.
like, you see what I'm saying? Like, I had to do literally a cost analysis on, is it worth my time and effort
Mhm.
to
Mm.
take out my hair? Whereas my white counterparts, let's go.
Right.
Let's
Right.
go. That's how they move, right?
Right.
And so
Right.
it's been really interesting having these conversations with women of color who also have maybe fine hair that can, they can do whatever. And, Black women who very much understand the cost. And what's
Mhm.
been really interesting is hearing white women now that we're talking to on tour be like, I did not know this is how much you guys spent on your hair. And I
Right.
did not
And
know
no
this.
idea.
Listen, how many times you have to spend this on your hair? So talking to a white woman being like, this is 400. Oh my God. I have to spend this 5 times a year. And
Right.
even then, the recommended is probably 6 to 8 times. So
Yes.
I'm doling out 2,000 off rip. We're not
Right.
even talking about the extensions.
Right. Right.
Anyway, yeah.
But actually, your book starts there, so that's a good spot. But since we're talking about the hair, I mean, and I'm not ashamed because people who watch regularly will know I'm normally in braids, but I didn't. I just went to a conference over the weekend and knew that money was going to be spent. Plus, I just had a birthday and I enjoyed my birthday
I
season.
love
It's
that.
like
Love
okay,
that.
but it was time to take the braids out, right? So I
Right.
had to make a decision. Am I going to spend, $300 to go get
Right.
my braids done again? Or am I just going to slap on a handy dandy wig and keep it moving
Sure.
for a few weeks until I'm ready to get
Right.
braids again? So yeah, it is something to think about. But in the book you talk about, basically it's there's beauty and makeup and all those sorts of things
Right.
that women across races will, some people wear it, some people don't, but
Right.
the hair is something that's very specific to us, whether it is braids or
Yes.
for those who still get relaxers or those who are getting weaves or buying quality wigs, all that sort of thing. And a
Mhm.
lot of it has to do with us being presentable in certain spaces.
Yes. What you're illustrating here is the cost of presentability. So, this idea that women typically have to spend more money to be seen as presentable in society. And so the
Mhm.
double tax arises here because along gender lines, we're spending more money. But because of racial lines, that way in which we are spending the money increases
Mhm.
substantially if you're Black and by extension, a woman of color, right? Because
Mhm.
really, women of color who have proximity to Black women are the ones spending the most on beauty and hair, right? So think about like, I don't know, like a biracial woman who has textured hair, right?
Mhm.
Or even like an Asian woman whose the white hair products aren't going to work for her hair. This is something that we learned too in some of our conversations early on, that Asian American women are also having to do this trial period with different products. And
Mhm.
so, yes, right? And in our hair, it's so crazy because I think it's so obvious to us because we've lived it from a very young age, which is kind of what I talk about at
Mhm.
the very beginning of the book, that I remember my first perm viscerally. And I remember who was there. I remember who was excited. And I remember what the whole setup looked like. We had a Just For Me box, right? Which we later learned those girls were natural.
Right.
It was a scam, right? I remember the smell. I remember the auntie who was so excited to lather this chemical on my hair to flatten its curls. And I also remember the discourse, which was, you know, in good faith, I would imagine, but a lot of her hair is hard to manage. It's too, right? Like, I don't know what to do with it. And like, I love my mom dearly, but like, hair is not her ministry, right? So she's just trying to think about, how do I manage my daughter's hair so she's out the door at 8 a.m. to her kindergarten class, right? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's no ill will. It's very much about practicality,
right?
Also thinking about reducing costs in other ways,
right?
So, you know, for me, that was a powerful thing to illustrate, and it was echoed in our conversations with high school girls and college age girls, especially Black girls, right? Because I thought they would have, you know, trouble finding their makeup shade. But I'm also forgetting that we're living in a post-Fenty world, right?
Yeah, so that's not so much a problem anymore.
It's not a problem anymore. I remember back in the day, you had to be Picasso out here mixing all these shades together, trying to find the perfect shade. It's still our hair. Right. And I think the other aspect of this is that we know that, you know, leading hair brands are upcharging for literal hair maintenance products that aren't even that good to begin with. Let's clock that T, right? And so you're going to have to go to maybe a Black hair product to maybe get what you actually need. But one, you're not sure if it's actually going to work for your hair. Our hair is very fragile, by the way. It's susceptible to breakage. This is something that we know from the research. But also, those products are higher price, significantly so. And part of the reason, let me maybe take an economics view here, is because of what we say, supply and demand. If you have low supply of something and everybody wants it, that increases its value, right? So if I go to Ulta and I'm looking to use pattern products on my hair, but there's only like 4 shampoos left. Right? For an entire area where there's a lot of Black people, higher value. And I would argue that corporations also know that. So they could be marking up on top of the markup, knowing that they can make a bigger profit from our attempts to be presentable. Right. It's quite nefarious, actually. And then I think the other added cost here is something that people don't really talk about. And I really wish I had gone into more detail about, is even in the stores that do carry our products, beauty supply stores, they're not owned by us. That's true. That money doesn't come back to our community. Very rarely, right? It's going to somebody else's community at our expense. Right. So once again, this cost of presentability that we're incurring, it's something that has to be addressed. And there's a lot of different ways that we talk about that in the book, but like ultimately it boils down to like, we should name it first and foremost. Right. So we're all on the same page about what the facts are. Right. What the facts are. Well, one thing I do love is that, well, number one, I'm in Atlanta, in the outskirts of Atlanta, right around the corner from me, actually walking distance, is a Black owned beauty supply store. So that's like, hallelujah. Can actually go get the stuff from Black people, which is beautiful because you don't see that many, you know, no matter where you are. But I was like, what is Black owned? And also, you know, nowadays, well, I don't want to spend too much time on the whole thing about the hair, but the fact that in a lot of cases, if you have figured out what products work for you, in many cases, you can go directly to the people to get it, you know, right now. So that's kind of good, because one of the other things you talk about, having to travel. So like, say, based upon where I live, I would have thought I would have had to travel to get products, but it just so happens somebody's right around the corner. But, you know, there's that. So now you got to drive to the right place to get the stuff, and then you're paying more for the stuff to begin with. And it might not even be on the shelves. And it might not even be. And that's all. Everything you just said, by the way, Ms. Marcy, is also backed by data. Yes. Black consumers do travel further to find beauty products, right? That's documented. And we are less likely to find products on shelves that cater to our needs. Then if you go to some of the big box stores, some we're not going to right now, but the other one is like they got it locked up. So then, yeah, that's a whole nother thing. So that really stood out to me because we all have dealt with that in one way or another. In the next area of the book, and let me just
quick sidebar. You do talk about the issues, but then you also talk about some of the solutions and things that we can look at and work towards, like the Crown Act is one of the things that falls under the part about hair and, talking to our legislators and people, the people who can help get these things passed so that we aren't dealing with the discrimination and all the other things along that line.
Yes.
But resume whitening in the next chapter really stood out to me. Number one, well, I'll let you talk about it, and then I'll tell you why it really stood out.
You talk about it. Let me know.
Well, why it stood out to me is, number one, we think of applying for jobs and thinking about, I think there was a statistic in there that said, like, wherein a white person a white male may apply 10 times, but a black person has to apply 15 times. So it's like 50% more effort is put in towards, finding a job. Yes. And how, we've often heard that people, if they see certain names, they'll just kind of scroll past certain names and things like that. And two things came up for me in reading about that. One, I in a sorority, and one of my younger sorors was whatever her work is, she has a portfolio, and it's a Canva portfolio, and then she sends it out, and her face and all that stuff is on the front page. And she was saying how
she had asked the question at the stop.
Oh yeah, that's right.
This story sounds familiar.
And maybe I'm getting everything mixed up. But yes, how she was saying that when people they click and they immediately click away when they see that it's her because she's black.
Crazy.
But I'm thinking about people's names. What is your name? And I have a new mentee that she has a name that is one that people would probably like. And yesterday, when I met with her counselor was saying that, I'm really working on making sure her resume is tight as she applies to college. And I'm thinking, wow, she's got a really, she's already dynamic, straight A student athlete, all of these things. But it's like she's really going to have to press past that thing of people are going to look at her name and maybe not want to consider her for certain things, even though she's got everything that she would need. And she's not, she's applying to, PWIs, predominantly white institutions. So I'm thinking, oh Lord, especially in today's day and age where they're trying to make it where there aren't things that are in place to help people who may be considered minorities. So all of that was in my head when I was reading that resume whitening.
And I think you really illustrated why hiring discrimination is so stupid, right? Like, let's just name it as it is. It's stupid. You're seeing a qualified candidate and you're dismissing them off of their name? Huh? Or if we want to extend it there, to their skin color? Why? Right? So in the case of your cousin who is, is it your cousin that did the Canva? So in the case of your cousin, she could be and probably is a phenomenal designer. And people are literally leaving that talent on the floor because they don't, or on the table because they don't want to, work with a Black woman. You're losing out on quality. You know what I'm saying? And I think for me, it's just kind of short-sighted. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me because your consumer base is probably diverse. So you're out here trying to hire, John and Bethany all the time, but your consumer base includes people beyond that.
Right.
And the reality is, I've been saying this in a couple of different places. Diversity in this country is inevitable.
Right.
I don't know what these people are talking about day in and day out. I understand that they are trying to unravel the very fabric of the pillars of diversity of this country. But the birth rate doesn't lie, right? Like, I'm so sorry, right? Africa is going to be the most populous continent in like 20 years, maybe less, okay? We know in this current generation, Generation Alpha and Generation Z, we know Generation Z leaned majority minority, not quite. Generation Alpha is officially majority minority, and anybody after is going to follow that trend, right? Which I think is also part of the disenfranchisement that's taking place at mass scale, right? They know the trends, and they're afraid of being replaced. That's the great replacement
Right.
theory.
That's really what it's all about.
That's really what it's all about. But going back to this topic around resume whitening, hiring discrimination, this is actually, funnily enough, my dissertation. This is what I focus on. So
Okay.
I think really deeply about, well, one, how stupid it is, first and foremost, but also because like there's so many studies that have been like, do employers really not want to hire people because they're Black? I'm talking 300 plus studies. And they find over and over since the 1970s, over and over and over again, yes,
Yeah.
we don't want to do that. So where does that leave us? And
Mm-hmm.
what I'm realizing is it leaves us with a singular choice, which is accountability. I like to say that if you want to be a bigot in your bathtub, that's your business. Okay. You want to bathe in those bubbles with your rubber ducky, do what you got to do. The moment you step outside, I'm holding you accountable immediately.
Right.
You don't have room in the outside world to be a bigot, at least not when I'm alive. Right. And so I think part of that means we disrupt hiring discrimination, right? Ideally, HR departments, workplace leaders who care about this topic would intervene. But we're also seeing that the incentives in those spaces are changing.
Right.
They're not really being prompted to care so much about DEI because there might be legal ramifications and social ramifications for doing so. And so I think researchers here play a really big role. I also think the masses play a really big role, right? So on the research side, we can design interventions to say, hey, how do we hold these discriminatory people, discriminatory spaces better accountable for their discrimination? Turns out if you want to shame people into being better, right, at scale, it's actually quite effective. And this is where the masses come in. So Target rolled back its DEI, right? It was kind of a crazy sort of development if you were following Target's trajectory. You know that Target came out really strong in 2020 in support of Black entrepreneurs. Tabitha Brown had a whole line that was akin to Stan Gaines, right? A whole line. And that was unprecedented, right? Only for them to renege the whole effort. And that's when Black people say, you renege the effort, we renege our dollars. And what happened? The Target CEO, stepped down. Right? They were losing foot traffic weekly. Because if the thing about Black people that we need to understand, especially Black women, is that we are the trend every time.
Every time.
We set the trend. And so that means that whatever we do, ultimately, everybody follows suit. It might be cheaply and not as sophisticated, but they're still following suit. We made it a negative marker to go to Target. Now people go to Target incognito.
Incognito.
Listen, and so my point here is that chapter for me was so important because I think that it was important to say, like, look, sometimes you got to do what you got to do, right? Resume whitening is this idea of like really stripping your resume of any identifiers of your Black or brown identity. And we see this happening across all people of color, where Asian Americans might include a English name, immigrants might do the same, Black Americans might take away certain aspects of their name or maybe focus on their middle name. Let's say your name is Malik Michael Johnson. You might just do Michael Johnson, right? Because you're not trying to be screened out. And I understand that as a survival tactic, but it's not sustainable, right? What's sustainable is us disrupting these systems for good. And it means that we hold these systems accountable, both at an individual level as researchers who are working in community and trying to design interventions, but also at a community level where we use the power of the dollar to say, you can't do that.
Right. That's good stuff. But and like I said, the real world application of that just right there is like, I'm seeing this, which is why I said these conversations the things you talk about in this book is real world. If you really, if you're out here and you have real conversations with people, you'll see that.
That's right.
One of the other things, and this also is current because you mentioned Lisa Cook in your book as well.
Yes.
And how it was so, iconic, or, how she became this first to be on the federal board. But now all of a sudden we get somebody else in there and they're trying to make up stuff to get her out of there.
So the context with Governor Lisa Cook is that She's actually my mentor.
Mm.
I've known her for many, many, many years. She's the first Black woman economist that I ever met, PhD holding economist. And she is someone who took me under her wing right away. So I've seen her journey over the last, almost 10 years. She's seen mine. And she loves to text me and be like, I see you. And I'm like, thank you.
You.
You know, but I think that this is actually really illustrative of the double tax, right? So the double tax is the compounded cost of racism and sexism. I know that we haven't spoken about it here, but I know that I'm preaching to the choir. So you guys already know what this is in some ways or shape or form. But what I argue in the book for our non-Black women peers is that if you ignore the costs that we face as Black women, as women of color, with respect to racism and sexism, you will bear a cost in the near future. Like, don't sleep on it. You think that, me being attacked is me being attacked. No, you're about to be attacked. Because if I fall, you fall. The way I say it is, either we all win or we all lose.
Right.
There is no world in which a Black woman loses and you're winning.
Right.
Our fates are tethered. And Governor Cook is a very good example of this, where what they're trying to do, for those who don't know, the Federal Reserve Board of Governors is the body of economists that oversees the body of economists and the economic system that manages our health when it comes to the economy. So they're the ones who set interest rates. They make decisions that affect how much money is in circulation. These are people who are making decisions that are affecting whether or not you can buy a house tomorrow or whether or not groceries are going to go up or down, right? Based off of the interest rates that they set. You do not want unqualified people in that position, regardless of your race, regardless of your gender, regardless of your class, because what those people do reverberates directly into your community, whether you like it or not, and will impact the global economy, which will have a reaction as well. So what's happening is that this man is trying to essentially allege, falsely might I add, because we've already found the proof, that, she's lying. She's a liar. And I think I take that personally, because I'm like, one thing I know about Governor Cook, she don't lie. Okay. She hasn't lied to me. I know that for her. She does not lie to me. So I know that, it's so funny. Someone had interviewed me a while back talking about, what if we find out that she's lying? I said, we won't.
Right.
She didn't lie. And what happened? 2 weeks later, they revealed what? She didn't lie. So anyway, my point here is her removal from the Fed will spell trouble for the entire global economic system. I'm not being dramatic. I'm being very serious, because really what's happening is he wants to shape the body of economists that oversees the economy at his political will and at the whims of him and his friends. Listen to what I just said.
Right.
He wants to shape the global economy to the will of him and his friends. That's like, I'm going to give him like 100 people that he's friends with. How many people live in the United States? 300 million and counting. You're telling me that this guy is trying to shape an economic system for him and his buddies at the expense of 300 million people? If you're not mad about that, you should be. But here's what I'm saying. That's a societal cost. If she is actually ousted. So what she's done now is she's countersued or sued.
Yes, which is good. Which is good.
By the way, so badass. I looked at the brief and I was like, Governor Cook, Lisa Cook versus the President of the United States. I said, I know that's right. Because really, this is standing between whether or not our economy functions tomorrow or it breaks. And you want her to win this case. You do.
Yes. But yeah, there's just thinking about all of the things, and you have to, even though you put it this way, a Black person, or you mentioned Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson in that section as well, they're the best of the best of the best, but there are people still going to try to make up things and lie about them, say that they didn't really earn it, all of these sort of things that are a part of the tax that we pay. Because we are the most educated. There's not anything that you put us in that we can't excel at, but somebody's always going to try to nitpick at things to try to make it seem like you didn't earn it or you don't deserve to be there.
And it's projection.
Mm-hmm.
These individuals who are saying that Dr. Cook, Governor Cook, Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson are unqualified are themselves unqualified. They are aggressively mediocre. Aggressively. They have nothing to show for it. And so what they're trying to do is distract you from their mediocrity by saying, well, look at that Black woman over there. She can never obtain merit. And that's really a fundamentally racist idea. This idea that Black people can't be meritocratic ever because Black people can't earn things ever because Black people aren't smart. Right. That's what that is. You follow the line, everything's eugenics, right? So it's just very much about, I just think that Black people are biologically less smart than white people. I think I'm a smarter person because I'm white. First of all, you sound stupid, right? Like that argument falls flat, okay? But also, you find out that these people have no experience, nothing to show for it, and their resumes are quite empty. Mm-hmm. A certain person got promoted recently. And what everybody can't stop talking about is how aggressively mediocre she is. Mm-hmm. And I'm being kind. She has no experience for the job that she just got. Zero. I would even argue negative 5,000 experience. So I had to talk to myself because I was feeling imposter syndrome. I was like, who am I? And then I looked at it and I said, wow, you're just going to be promoting people off of vibes. And let me just be also honest for the college students who might be tuning in. Anybody who tells you got into college because you're Black is a liar. Mm-hmm. And let me tell you what the real tea is. The real tea is people get into college because they're white. Uh-oh.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes. That is and money, the legacies, all these other things that work in their favor.
We know from the studies that there is one of my favorite papers ever that 43% of the incoming 2019 class of Harvard students that were white did not get in based on merit. They got in because of Dean's List, meaning that somebody in their family is rich enough to donate something to the school. Child of faculty or staff. Athletes, which if you were following the family, it's not Family Matters, the white one, with Jesse. I don't know. Okay. You know what I'm talking about? I don't know. Y'all know the show. That one, Lori Loughlin or whatever.
Athletes yeah.
To get their kids into the school. Some of them are not even supposed to be playing there.
Right.
They don't play no sports. And then, of course, legacy, which I don't know if folks know this, but if you are legacy and you are in the top 0.1%, you are 8 times more likely to get into Ivy League universities. 8 times.
Wow. Because it's about the money. It's not about the intelligence or the smarts. It's about the money.
It's about your proximity to power and your proximity to wealth. And then you got to ask yourself, who tends to be proximate to power and proximate to wealth? I'll share one last anecdote on this subject before we jump into another one. One of the craziest stories that I read, and I also included in that chapter, was about how, I don't know if y'all know this, there's an entire industry around getting rich kids into elite colleges. An entire industry, okay? Where you have college consultants that basically are people who go to these schools and they come out and they go to places like New York and they're all around Dalton School and all these other places and they're advising those families about how you game it. That's basically what they're doing. One guy shared with the New York Magazine that a parent was willing to pay him $1.5 million to not work with all the other students.
Wow.
1.5 million. And when he said no, he said, maybe I should just buy your business. When I tell you, it's rigged. Sorry. Like for me, like as someone who studies inequality, what keeps me going is knowing this is not the way it's supposed to be. They are rigging it. It's a rig. It's their rigging. It's a rigmarole.
Rigmarole, right, in their favor. We have a question. Let me ask: aren't the universities incentivized to get kids with proximity to power? Yeah, so the universities have power by proxy.
They want alumni money.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, right. So they want alumni money. They need money to keep going themselves. So they have an incentive to allow the child of IKEA to come to the
Mm.
school, right? Because it raises their profile. It might attract more children of IKEA types, right? And they're more likely to get, more alumni dollars at the end of it. But again, my point here is just like anybody saying that Black people are unqualified because we're Black is racist. They're a bigot. I also think we should normalize calling racist. You're a racist. You're a bigot. And you're a bigot outside of your bathtub, which is why I have an issue with it. So I'm going to go ahead and make it really hard for you to do that by designing accountability mechanisms.
I love that. I love that. One of the other things, and we're not going to be able to hit all of them, but that wasn't the point.
It's all right.
We're going to kind of dip and dab a little bit.
Listen.
One of the things that I really wanted to talk about as well is the whole thing of dollars and cents. Because the thing is, we are overcharged and underpaid. So this kind of leans into the underpaid piece.
That's right.
Of how much money we're making or not making. And many people are familiar with the whole thing of like Black women's equal pay day and what that means, and how we make, X amount of cents to every dollar and things like that. But a couple things really stood out to me in this particular chapter, that oftentimes people, it could be the person that you're being employed by, and sometimes it could be the people in your circle, that when you get, X amount of dollars, they'll be like, oh, well, you should be grateful.
And let me maybe extend this conversation beyond just dollars and cents. By the way, there's a little bit of a play on the word, right? Dollars and cents. Right? Recently, the vice president told Joy Ann Reid to be grateful. And I think what we should do as Black women is say, for what? And to whom? Why should we be grateful?
Yes.
Should I be grateful that you're paying me less than I know I deserve? I work the hardest here. I don't get paid as much. Should I be grateful that you've made it impossible for me to build wealth in this country? Or should I be grateful that I have to hide parts of my identity so I can get a job? Which part should I be grateful for? In Joy Ann Reid's case, should I be grateful that I got paid significantly less than my coworker, Rachel Maddow? Even though I'm bringing in similar numbers, I'm hitting on similar hard-hitting stories that are affecting actually a wider range of people. What should I be grateful for? I think we need to come with some smoke. I actually think that Black folks, we're a little too nice. I think we need to be a little bit meaner. It's kind of what I've kind of concluded from this entire tour and having written this book, that when you really read this book in its entirety, I think Tim Waltz's daughter, was someone who I spoke to on tour. She said she finished the book and she was angry. Good. Let's now do something with that anger. Let's channel that anger, something productive. But my point there is that, the underpaid portion actually undergirds everything else. If I don't have income, I can't be the kind of mother that my kid needs. I can't take care of my aging parents and my aging relatives. I can't build wealth, because if there's no money pouring into the pot is empty.
Right.
It means I can't buy a house. I need to show proof of wealth in order to buy that house. It also means that, things like beauty, it's going to be harder for me to afford it. Right? So there's all these other trickle-down effects, quite frankly, from us not getting paid what we deserve. Right. And that's why at the very, very beginning of the book, I don't know if y'all see that opening line. I say, womanhood is expensive. This is dedicated to my nieces. So always ask for more and then some. The prevailing thought there is Black women, we are always going to be lowballed. Always. They're starting with the lowball. So anything you ask for is course correction. Dang, that was bar. Anything you ask for is course correction.
Yes.
It's really probably bringing you up to the real value, and they're still going to try to lowball you. Right? So from that kind of thinking, where I've landed is I will never accept the first offer ever again. Ever again. Because I'm looking at the data and I'm saying, oh, you guys consistently, on average, at the median, meaning the middle, you always lowball us. This is a historic phenomenon. It's all
Mm-hmm.
present day, and I don't want it to be my future. I don't want it to be the future of my nieces.
Mm-hmm.
Reality of the matter is that Black women in particular, we are the hardest working group of women in the United States. This is a fact. Highest
Mm-hmm.
labor force participation, which is why us exiting the labor force en masse is a bad thing.
It is a bad thing for a multitude of reasons, but yes.
Many reasons, right? And what I'll say here is that ultimately, us being underpaid leads to underinvestment in our families, in our communities, and ultimately in society.
Mm-hmm.
So either you pay us what we're worth, or you reap the costs of not paying us as much as we deserve.
Right.
Right.
Right. And just in you saying that, and I thought about it as I was reading, because yes, we should demand more, we should ask for more. Yeah. But then what do you say to the person who says, oh, well, I can't because it's better to have that than have nothing at all?
It's a real trade-off that I think Black women and Black people in general have to go up against. And I think that's why transparency is really important. Talking with other Black people, talking with allies even in times, right, can really help mitigate against that. This is why people join unions.
Yes. Yes.
Right? Yes. Because they know the employee. Let me tell you something about corporations. They don't care about you. They don't care about you. I'm so sorry. Like, they don't. They're profit maximizing entities. They care about making a profit. Right? Really, the CEO is getting paid a whole lot of money because he's turning a profit. Right. Arguably questionable in terms of the amount of money he's getting paid. Usually, it's usually a he, usually a white E, but that is what he's getting rewarded for. You turned a profit this year. I'm giving you a bonus for that profit. My overall thought process around this is that, there's a cost to asking for more. So don't do it by yourself. Mm. So for me, I opened that story up that chapter up by talking about when I negotiated my first salary and how I almost got underpaid by $20,000. But the difference maker was a Black woman in the organization who said no. Mm-mm. Right. And so sometimes it's in the organization, sometimes it's someone across from you who also got a similar offer or a higher offer. This is where our communication in community makes the difference. I think a lot of times people want to be individuals about these types of things. They don't want to talk about it as taboo. Baby, there's a reason why these unions are getting the wages that they want to get. It's because they're linking arms. And that's what we need to do even before we enter a lot of these spaces.
Mm-hmm. That's good stuff. That's good stuff there. But we're going to kind of skip over a little bit. We might end up going a few minutes after, if that's okay, Anna, because this has been deep. But you do talk about things that happen as you're trying to climb the ladder and the broken rungs and trying to climb the ladder in corporations. You talk about that. You do also talk about home ownership, which you just mentioned there. Like, if we're not making the money, it's harder for us to even have what we need to buy homes, but it's already hard to buy homes because maybe we're working in jobs where we're a lot of people are working in jobs where they're not making a lot of money to begin with. That's then all of the different things, like the GI Bill. And I'm a former vet. I happen to not be a homeowner at this time, but GI Bill and what that does and what it doesn't do. So there is a chapter where you talk a lot about Black home ownership, because that is all a part of wealth. Yes, right. But I want to lean in on two things which you have already mentioned, because they're very much tied together, and that's the mothering and also caregiving, because they're tied. Because if you're a mother, you're a caregiver.
That's right.
Yeah. And
I have a lot of thoughts about these chapters. I will say that these chapters made me a better human. I think the book in general made me a better human, but it was these two chapters when I realized I could be showing more grace to my mom and my sister. Right? So I'm not a mother. and my parents are not old enough yet where I have to be taking care of them. They're pushing it though, respectfully, but like they're not there yet. They're very strong. But I think that the mothering chapter, which I'll start off with, was the singular most radicalizing chapter for me to write. I think part of it is because I was writing it around the time when a lot of people were having a discourse about the baby bust, how there's a decline in birth rates happening globally, especially in the United States, is rapidly declining in terms of how many people are having babies. And also, like, how do we incentivize women to have more kids, right? Like, why aren't women having kids? That sort of thing. So I was writing that chapter around that time. And I just was curious about the cost. And I didn't even dig into everything, right? I digged into the ultrasound cost, the cost of having a baby, and then, of course, the cost of childcare, and then how mothers are treated once they become mothers in the workplace. And I was just blown away, to say the least, at just how much money we ask mothers and parents in general to dole out to raise your children in the States. To just know if you have a baby, you got to pay for the pregnancy test. Once you get the pregnancy test, you got to go to prenatal care, ultrasounds. All of this costs money, especially if you don't have health insurance. Then you have the baby. And let's pray you don't have complications, because that's going to triple your bill probably. Right? Average cost of having a C-section is about $24,000. Then you talk to the fact that, or you look to the fact that Black women are much more likely to have unplanned C-sections. So you in the delivery room like this, but belly out, and they're saying, hey, actually, we need to cut your stomach open.
Yeah.
And your cost now has gone up by $10,000 at least. And you can't be sitting there like, what's the
no, wait a minute, no.
benefit analysis of having my baby? You're not thinking about that. You're like, do whatever you need to do to get the baby out safely and make sure I don't die. And then there's that cost where it's like, if you're a Black woman, the culturally incompetent care that you get could cost you your life. An incalculable cost, I would argue. Then let's say you have the baby. You're safe and sound. Now it's childcare. Childcare. Let me come close to the camera. Childcare is a crazy cost.
It is.
It's a crazy cost. I don't understand why we are asking families to take on a second mortgage to raise their children. It is a ridiculously high expense, irrespective of your race, gender, and class. I talk to rich white people, I talk to poor Black folks, and everybody got the same complaint. Why does it cost so damn much for me to take care of my kids? To put my kid. The thing is, the what's frustrating about this is we're in a country that demands adults work all the time.
Right.
So you're asking people, okay, you don't got time to take care of your kids during the day.
Right.
So you need to put them somewhere. But then you are upping the price of where you're putting them.
If you want them to be safe and cared for and not have to be worried.
And then the fact of the matter is, across racial lines, we know that Black families and white families are bringing in different familial income amounts. About $30,000 less for Black families. So if you do decide to take the childcare route, it's a higher share of a Black family's income as compared to a white family's income. It's more burdensome for the Black family who's already facing other costs.
Right.
And who's more likely to be headed by what? A Black woman. Who we know 69% of Black women are the primary breadwinners in their households. So what this means then is what? I'm having to suffer at the hands of the costs that I'm facing as an individual. And those costs, because they are left unaddressed, are affecting my family and my children. And we don't even know how those costs will trickle down generationally.
Right? Right, because I'm just thinking about, yes, there's daycare and all of that. And then, once they age out of like daycare or after school care and things like that, there are always other expenses. And then you think about the fact that, the child gets sick and has to be out. And I oftentimes think about summer vacations, to be honest with you, Anna, because my mother was a teacher, so she was at home with me on all of my breaks and stuff, but everybody doesn't have it that way. So how do you manage that throughout the summer, or if the child gets sick and things like that, and you have to take off of work? And then in the book you talk about sometimes as a woman, whether you have children or not, sometimes in some places discrimination can keep you from like even getting certain jobs or things, because they think, oh, you're not going to be as dedicated because you're a mom, or you're always having to take off because of your kids. So I mean, there's a lot of things that really have to be taken into consideration.
There's an op-ed that I hope to publish one day, and its title is this: Society Hates Moms, and also hates the women who choose not to be moms.
Ooh.
And that's just what it is. You are asking women to become mothers, but you're punishing mothers out in the open, right? You're making it harder for mothers to raise their actual kids, to have their kids, to take care of their kids. And then if mothers decide, I want to go back to the workforce, you're penalizing them for choosing motherhood. You're saying, I'm going to hire you less, I'm going to promote you less, and I'm going to pay you less.
Mm-hmm.
And if you experience any workday disruptions because of your kid, I'm going to dock you for that too.
Mm-hmm. And don't do it too many times, because you'll be more than docked. You'll be fired.
You'll be fired. And it's crazy to me because moms then say, well, I should just leave the labor force. I should just leave the workforce. But that means you might be forfeiting a pension. Something that you might need later on to help your kids take care of you, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the overcharged and underpaid part, where it's like, I'm not getting what I need to survive.
Mm-hmm.
And you're making it harder for everybody who depends on me as a result to also survive. Mm-hmm. And so once again, going back to sort of what the premise of this book is about, which is really, I like to say the double tax precedes Black women best. We're saying these are all the costs that we're facing, which is why our framework absolutely needs to change. If Black women are really bearing the brunt of these costs, why aren't Black women the benchmark for progress?
Yes.
Why aren't we using our experiences as a litmus test for whether or not something is working or not? Mm-hmm. And it really boils down to what I've been telling people is that our society is made up of multiple circles that overlap, a huge Venn diagram.
Right.
Our experiences are not super unrelated with one another, right. But there's one group whose experience seems to encapsulate so many others, and that's Black women.
That's us. Absolutely.
Breadwinners relate to white men. Women, all types of women, all types of shades. We tend to be poor, middle class, working class. We work multiple jobs oftentimes. A lot of Americans. So if something's not working for us, it's not isolated to us.
It's not isolated to us.
It's not working for a couple other people too. And what I like to tell people is that Black women are the economic shock absorbers of a crisis that's oncoming. We'll feel it first and hardest for sure.
Absolutely.
But if you don't address the cost with us, you could spell disaster for everyone else. And this looks like, for example, Black women being more subject to subprime loans.
Yes.
Worse loan deals, period, in housing. The subprime loan crisis got so bad. We saw the early signs in Black and brown communities where we know, once again, who's the breadwinner typically? Black women.
Right.
Y'all said that's not our issue. That's not our ministry. 2008 financial crisis. Shortly after. Why wait when we already know the playbook? Which is, if a crisis is coming, it hits us first, then it comes to everybody else. And we're already seeing this, right? So a bunch of Black women have exited the workforce, right? We saw our unemployment start to spike in the spring. It just now became a story 6 months later, which I have issues with, but regardless. But what story is now following? Mothers are leaving the workforce. Women are experiencing higher unemployment rates. It's almost as if we kind of knew this was coming.
It was coming.
Because the canary was canarying.
Right. Right.
You guys just didn't think it was a canary for you.
That's the big thing, Anna, that people, they don't really care until it like hits their backyard or their
Absolutely.
front
And
door.
it's
They
too
don't
late.
really care. They don't care.
I like to say that the double tax, not addressing the double tax, is like you see the fire 5 houses down. You in the same block.
Mm-hmm.
5 houses down, the fire is ablaze. You see the flames, you smell the smoke, and you say, you know what? I'm gonna go back inside and catch on another episode of Family Feud.
Mm-hmm.
Gonna mind my business, my business.
Right.
And then suddenly you see the flames right outside your window. And you're like, how did it get here? Don't piss me off. Come on.
Right.
What? So
Right.
I think for me, it's important to have people visualize it that way because it almost shows how illogical it is to
Mm-hmm.
not pay attention to
Mhm.
marginalized people in our economy. It's a
Mhm.
fire. And like a fire crisis spreads.
Mm-hmm.
Don't wait for the crisis to get to you. If you don't
Right.
want it to get to you, you put it out now.
You put
That's
it
how-
out now. You
That's
put
right.
it out now. Well, I don't want to keep you too much longer, but in the mothering, it also applies to caregiving, and we know that Black
Yes.
women or women are the primary caregivers. You know, we're the ones that's making sure people are taken care of for a variety of reasons, and that impacts us as well. You know, our time, our money, our energy, and that is a tax that we have to pay that men generally aren't paying, because even
No.
if it's a case where, say, it's a husband and wife and his family gets sick, she's probably more likely to help out than what he is, unless he has sisters. So so those sorts of things, just understanding how that impacts us. And last but not least, I would be remiss, I have to talk about retirement and what that is all about, because I may not look it, but I'm getting close. I'm very close to it. I'm closer to it than I was a couple of years ago.
I hear you.
And just really thinking about the fact that all of these things lend itself to whether or not people are even able to retire, and what it looks like as an elder and all of that.
I think, well, let me address the caregiving aspect 1000%, right? So, one of the most important things I think we learned from the women that we spoke to is that for women, caregiving is just assumed. There's never a conversation. It's you're taking care of everybody else, right? And I think what one white woman said was, the moment you start assuming care as a responsibility, it never leaves you.
Mm-hmm.
You are always taking care. Everybody always expects you to be the one who takes care of everyone else. And this is what I mean by I began to understand my mom a lot better. So I opened that book up or that chapter up by talking about how my mom used to be on the phone early in the morning. I didn't have alarm clocks. I had my mom. She'd be on the phone with people in Ghana, and I'd be like, what's going on? Only to find out that literally her entire extended family depends on her.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So she's out here trying to coordinate. And she'd be talking to two different people on two different phones, the phone cards ready to go. And I think that for me, my question after I heard all the stories was, who takes care of the caregiver?
Right.
And that goes to retirement, where you realize the only real policy tool we have in place right now to take care of the caregivers is Social Security.
Mm-hmm.
Any politician that is telling you guys, sorry, my mom just came in. Anybody who's telling you guys, oh, we need to get rid of Social Security checks, they're a liar and they're a thief. They actually want you to die. I don't know what else to tell you, because the only way that many women, especially Black women, are staying afloat at that time of their life is because of Social Security. Because as we just talked about, the double tax is not happening in isolation. It's compounding. Over the course of your entire life, you find that if it has not been addressed, it will show up at the end of your life. So that means that if you faced workplace discrimination, or you didn't get paid enough, or you were in a career path that didn't have a pension plan or retirement savings, you might still have to work. Unless, of course, you have income coming from the government, which allows you to say, okay, let me rest. Right. And the reality of the matter is that women at that age are still caregiving.
They are.
They're still caregiving. So it's not just that this income is affecting this individual. It's affecting what I like to say an economic ecosystem around Black women in particular. right? You got all these different types of people relying on you, and their well-being is a function of your well-being. If you're not well, they're not well, right? And so these policy levers like Social Security, like having different types of retirement savings accounts, knowing how to sort of tap into what we have, and if you have a pension, these are really, really important. But I think for me, just to kind of wrap up what you were talking about, it was the realization that the double tax never leaves.
Never leaves.
Never leaves. As you are going through different phases of your life. And that's the reason why the book was constructed that way. If you guys notice, it's almost like the first mirror. That was what my initial title for that chapter, right? Your first paycheck, your first promotion. The double tax is sticking around. Unwanted house guest. And unless you address it, it just gets worse. It impacts the next phase of life, right? And why people who aren't Black women or who aren't women of color, who aren't women in general, should care about this is because you all depend on us.
Absolutely. They wouldn't even be here if it wasn't for us.
Listen, I've been telling people real men read the double tax. And the reason I keep saying this is if you're trying to understand the women in your life and why you do not want them to suffer, this is the book for you. Because if they suffer, you suffer for sure. Because you'll learn at the end of life that everybody, regardless of gender, relies on women. Every time.
Every time. We have a couple of comments just about things that are in the culture. The Handmaid's Tale is their goal. Patriarchy, run amok. Absolutely.
I would argue for white women in particular, what their goal is: Pez dispensers. They want them to pop out babies, and they do not care about their bodies. I said something on Blue Sky recently. White women center white men, but white men do not center white women. And until white women understand that, we're going to be in here for a long time. Yeah.
The other comment, the Hunger Games wasn't just a movie series. Their plans for the 99% is diabolical.
It's diabolical. But notice what you said, 99%. We're the majority. I keep telling people, if we wanted to stop this today, we could stop it. You saw how South Korea pulled up on their out-of-pocket leader in droves. That's the kind of energy you need for people who are trying to play in your face. Absolutely.
Well, Anna, we could talk all night, girl, because you got the receipts, you're coming with the knowledge and everything. And of course, as I said earlier on, we couldn't talk about everything, but this is just enough to whet your appetite about what's in this book. Y'all see, I got a whole bunch of tabs and stuff.
You're
but yes, it's like this book it's so relevant. It's so critical for any time, but I would say especially this time because yes, you bring these things to light, but then it also kind of helps us to figure out what we need to do, or what what giving us some marching orders or some things to reach out to legislators or to find co-workers to organize with or do things in our community. It also does that. So it's not just telling you what the problems are, it's also offering some solutions, but at the end of the day, it's going to take us in community and having these conversations and figuring out where we can lean in and figure out what it is that we can do, to make things better.
Amazing. And thank you so much for having me here again. Whether or not you're listening to this live or on playback, I really do hope that you feel empowered by the end of this conversation, right? There's a lot that we can do. The book offers some solutions, places to start. But I think what Miss Marcy really gets at is at the core of the book, which is there is no way we get through this without linking arms with our other Black women and other folks in our community who care about our well-being. That is literally the only way through this. And it is our only power, quite frankly, as part of the masses.
As part of the masses. So, Anna, this has been such a pleasure. I said to see you in person first, and now to see you here. I have you all to myself, and we both made sure we put our green on, I love that. I love that. So for anyone who hasn't had a chance to pick up a copy of The Double Tax yet, let me catch this right quick. Great work. Yes, it is. Yes, she's got great work. Great work. But if anyone has not had a chance to pick up a copy of the book yet, it's available, in a whole lot of places. But one of them is the Brown Girl Collective Bookstore, which is attached to Bookshop. If you are a Bookshop shopper, you can go there and you will find the double tax at the near the top of the page as one of our recent guests here in this space. So of course I know, Anna, that you are like traveling and traveling the world, because that's why we had to do this today.
I'm on a world book tour, which is
you're on a world tour. I love that.
Right. I'm currently back in Boston, which it feels great to sleep in my own bed. But what I will say is I'm headed to London, UK next, and also Germany. So I'll be all over the UK for the next few weeks for their Black History Month. So if you're in the UK or folks in the UK, make sure that they first and foremost follow me on Instagram. I'll be posting the tour dates, I think either tomorrow or in 2 days, so that you know where I'm headed. But I'll be going to places like the Bank of England, Soho House, London School of Economics, all types of folks, and they're going to have a lot of public facing events. And so I really do hope that you join us. It's going to be a great discussion, especially in that context where I think these conversations are starting to really emerge to the top and really are made space for during Black History Month. So it should be really, really fun. And my fits in London are going to be they're going to be tea. So I really hope that you get to see those too.
Okay. Yes. And what I wanted to say, I love the fact that it does also, you're including the UK specifically, because you do talk, some of the people that you talk to, some of the things that you reference in the book are the UK, because there is there are Black people in the UK who are dealing with some of the things that we're dealing with here in the US and Germany. I love that as well.
Yes, another place too. They don't collect a lot of data on Black folks there, which is why we don't know about it. But they're definitely going through it. Yeah.
So it's just good, again, for us to have these conversations locally, nationally, globally. So we can, start to make change. Because I can't think of some movie where they're like, there are all these fingers with, we put them all together. It's a mighty fist. I can't remember what movie it was. It was a mighty fist. It might have been something that Oprah did in some movie. I can't remember. But it's true. All this we taking, it's a mighty fist to begin to bring about change. So Anna, I'm going to let you grab a sip of water. Please don't hang up yet, because I'm just going to let everybody know what's coming next. But I want to say good night to you. So don't hang up. Thank you
all. Thanks for tuning in.
Yes, definitely. The next book, whenever that is, you're always welcome.
I'll let you know. I'm taking a break right now.
Yeah, I know that's right. Plus, you are still in school. So
that's my day job.
Right, exactly. Well, I'll see you in just a moment.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. So I was ready for that conversation. And, again, we had, a chance to be in the same space a few weeks ago. And I wanted to make sure that I brought Anna here, because I just think this is such an important conversation. And here with Live Well Sister, Brown Girl Collective, yes, we can have some fun talking about romance books and all that kind of stuff, but this is real life. These are our lives. And we want to make sure that we are always having conversations that are important to us and our ability to live well, because if some of this stuff isn't right financially and we're not maximizing opportunities financially and otherwise, then in being taxed in a lot of extra ways, then it's kind of difficult to think about some of the other things that we may think of considering what a live well lifestyle looks like. So that's why it's important. And yes, I agree. We are the global majority, as Karen Hunter reminds us. So as the global majority, it is important that we continue to have these conversations. So just by means of announcement, if you are watching this in real time, I want to let you know that on Monday, we will be back with Positive Obsession, The Life and Times of Octavia E. Butler by Susanna M. Morris. And one thing about Octavia E. Butler, if you know anything about her with Afrofuturism and things like that, she was definitely one that tapped into, Black people in the community and what things will look like in the future and that sort of thing. So you'll want to join this conversation with Susanna M. Morris, who wrote this book. Then next Wednesday, we're actually going to take kind of a different turn. Anna said something earlier about the wine. Well, next week, we're going to be talking about wine pairing for the people. We will have Cha McCoy here with us. She is a sommelier, and she's going to tell us about ways that we can learn to pair our wine with African foods. So, Anna, you might want to check this book out when you get a chance. But with African foods, things that we eat and not just the stuff that we may normally see when we think of being able to pair wines. And then, last but not least, for right now, because my schedule is booked, but I want to say it's on the 20th of this month, I will be talking to Lola Akanade about bitter honey. And so she's been here before, but she'll be coming back. She is a young lady that actually lives in Sweden. So it's interesting to see about that whole part of us being a global majority. She lives there. So she writes books that center women that live in her homeland. So that's what's coming, our next three guests. So I do look forward to seeing you all again for some of the future conversations. And again, continue to like and share. Make sure you're following. Make sure you turn your notifications on so you can know when we have other great, outstanding guests to join us in this space. So I know I've gone a little longer than normal, but it was worth it talking to Anna, and she brings the heat. We probably could have talked for a whole nother hour. But, we want to be respectful of everyone's time. And I look forward to seeing you again on this coming Monday. Take good care. Bye-bye.